Imagine walking down the street and seeing a Karen laugh at a homeless person. What would you do? Ignore it? Speak up? Walk away? Now, imagine you're Barron Trump. The spotlight is always on you. Every move you make is scrutinized. In this video, we'll show you the choice he made when faced with this exact situation and how it sparked a chain reaction that no one saw coming. The bustling city street fell silent as a sharp, mocking laugh cut through the air. John, a weathered man in his 50s, sat on the cold pavement, his cardboard sign trembling in his hands. His eyes, once bright with hope, now reflected the weariness of countless rejections and harsh words. A well-dressed woman approached, her designer heels clicking on the sidewalk. Her Gucci handbag swung carelessly at her side, a stark contrast to John's meager possessions. As she drew near, John's gaze met hers, a flicker of hope quickly extinguished by her cruel smirk. Uh, uh, um, well, the woman drawled, her voice dripping with disdain. What do we have here? Another lazy bum expecting handouts? Anna. John's shoulders slumped, his gaze falling to the ground as the woman's words cut deep. Nearby pedestrians shifted uncomfortably, averting their eyes from the scene unfolding before them. Some quickened their pace, eager to escape the growing tension. The woman's laughter rang out again, drawing curious and uncomfortable stares from passers-by. You know, she continued, her voice rising, if you put half as much effort into finding a job as you do into sitting here looking pathetic, you might actually make something of yourself. The air grew thick with tension as the woman continued her tirade. John's weathered hands gripped his cardboard sign tighter, knuckles turning white. His lips pressed into a thin line, holding back words he knew would fall on deaf ears. Oh, don't give me that look, the woman sneered, noticing John's pained expression. I work hard for my money. Why should I give it to someone who can't be bothered to do the same? A few onlookers began to whisper among themselves, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort. One young woman took a hesitant step forward as if to intervene, but quickly thought better of it and melted back into the crowd. The entitled woman, emboldened by the lack of opposition, pressed on. You're a disgrace to this city, she spat. People like you are the reason our streets are filthy and unsafe. Why don't you do us all a favor and— Her words were suddenly cut short as a tall figure emerged from the crowd. The unexpected presence caused the woman to take a startled step back, her tirade momentarily forgotten, as the man who carried her, the gray-wigged, nondescript figure, passed across her. A hush fell over the street as the young man stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. The baseball cap cast a shadow over his features, but there was something in his stance that made even the most indifferent passers-by pause. John, still seated on the cold pavement, tensed instinctively. The young man's hand moved to the brim of his cap. For a moment, he hesitated, steeling himself for what was to come. In one fluid motion, he removed it. Gasps rippled through the crowd as recognition dawned. Phones emerged from pockets, and hushed whispers spread like wildfire. The entitled woman's smug expression faltered, her eyes widening. John looked up, confusion etched on his weathered features. He glanced from the stunned onlookers to the young man, trying to piece together what was happening. The street had transformed into an impromptu stage, with all eyes fixed on this unexpected player in their daily drama. The young man's striking blue eyes, filled with determination and compassion, met John's gaze. An unspoken understanding passed between them, two souls who'd never met, yet somehow recognized something in each other. The young man's lips curved into a small, reassuring smile before he turned to address the woman. "Excuse me," his voice rang out, clear and steady. "I couldn't help but overhear your comments, and I have to say, I'm disappointed." His tone was polite but firm, carrying a weight that belied his years. The woman sputtered, her earlier bravado evaporating. I didn't mean, that is, I was just— Ma'am, he continued, his voice softening. "I understand that it's easy to make assumptions about people we don't know, but I've learned that everyone has a story, and it's rarely as simple as we might think." He glanced back at John, who watched with a mix of wariness and wonder. "My name is Barron Trump," he said, addressing the entire crowd, "and I believe we have an opportunity here to do something meaningful." Barron knelt beside John, meeting him at eye level. "Sir, if you're willing, I'd like to hear your story, not for publicity or politics, but because I believe every voice deserves to be heard." He extended his hand, not in pity or condescension, but as one human being to another. The crowd's collective breath hung in the air, a palpable tension building as Barron's words echoed in the sudden silence. The entitled woman's mouth opened and closed, her previous bravado crumbling. She took a half-step back, her designer heels clicking on the pavement. Her face flushed red, a mix of embarrassment and anger flashing across her features. Onlookers fumbled for their phones, illuminating faces twisted with curiosity and disbelief. Barron lowered himself to the ground beside John, his tailored suit brushing against the gritty sidewalk. John's weathered face registered shock, his eyes widening at the unexpected proximity. "I'm Barron," the young man said softly, extending his hand. John hesitated before clasping Barron's palm. As John began to speak, his voice rough from disuse, Barron leaned in slightly. The crowd strained to hear, but Barron's focus remained solely on John. John's story unfolded in hushed tones, a tapestry of struggle and resilience. He spoke of unexpected tragedy, systems that seemed designed to keep him down, and small kindnesses that had kept hope alive. As he listened, Barron's face softened, genuine empathy replacing rehearsed poise. John's shoulders, initially hunched, began to relax. His eyes, once downcast, now met Barron's gaze with a flicker of hope. His weathered hands gesticulated as he recounted his experiences. Internally, Barron grappled with the weight of John's words. Shock at the harsh realities he'd been sheltered from, guilt at his own privilege, and a growing determination to make a difference churned within him. Barron rose slowly, helping John to his feet. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd as people exchanged glances, unsure of what they were witnessing. The murmurs of the crowd faded, replaced by a new tension in the air. Barron Trump, still holding John's weathered hand, found himself at the center of a rapidly unfolding drama. "Yes," he said. "Where are you in the will?" "At the dock," Barron Trump said, and he bolted down the steps. Barron's first instinct was to find immediate shelter for John. As they walked Cleveland streets, doors closed in their faces. Hotel managers eyed them suspiciously, their gazes lingering on John's tattered clothes. Even shelters, overwhelmed and underfunded, turned them away with apologetic shrugs. Social media exploded. Hashtags like Barron Helps and Trump Homeless Stunt trended simultaneously. Some praised the young man's compassion, while others questioned his motives. Following all of this, the Instagram handle for Fave transitioned to black in support of him. Still, it was hard to know who was more offended, his social media traffic or the fact that Barron helps people, and some said he was probably the owner of 2 gyms. Some praised the young man's compassion, while others. At Trump Tower, Barron's family reacted with concern. "You don't understand the backlash this could create," his mother warned, her voice tinged with worry. "The media will twist this, use it against us." For John, the sudden attention was overwhelming. Years of invisibility had taken their toll. Now strangers approached with cameras, wanting to hear his story. He flinched at their touch, eyes darting nervously. Barron grappled with new realities. His privileged upbringing hadn't prepared him for the complexities of homelessness. As John spoke of the bureaucratic hurdles he faced, of the difficulty in getting identification without an address, Barron realized how much he had to learn. "So, All right, John's got these treatments, he's got his finances in order. They navigated the labyrinth of social services together, waiting for hours in crowded offices, filling out endless forms, only to be told they needed more documentation. Each setback chipped away at John's fragile hope. Barron faced his own obstacles. His attempts to use connections were met with skepticism. "We can't give preferential treatment," one social worker explained gently, "even if you're a Trump." Despite the roadblocks, Barron's determination grew. He saw the resilience in John's eyes, the way the older man straightened his shoulders each time they were turned away. It fueled Barron's resolve to make a difference, not just for John, but for others facing similar struggles. As the morning sun crept over Cleveland's skyline, Barron and John sat in a small cafe, their coffee warming their hands against the chill. John's weathered fingers traced his mug, his eyes holding a glimmer of cautious hope. Ending in painful darkness at everything that is, and finding at least one existence beyond it. "I used to be a carpenter," John said softly. "Had my own business, built custom furniture." His voice, rough from years on the streets, carried a hint of pride. Then the recession hit, and everything fell apart. Barron listened intently, his brow furrowed. John's world felt foreign, yet as he spoke of shattered dreams, Barron found himself drawn in, his perspective shifting. So, days turned to weeks as they navigated the maze of social services together. They waited in crowded offices, deciphered complex paperwork, and faced countless rejections. Each small victory, a new ID card, a doctor's appointment, a lead on housing, felt monumental. Their growing friendship didn't escape notice. Some praised Barron's compassion, while others questioned his motives. John faced skepticism from his street companions, who viewed his association with a Trump as a betrayal. But Dimitri pretended he didn't care, who saw it all. One challenging day, after another job rejection, John's frustration boiled over. "Maybe this is all pointless," he muttered. "You can't fix a lifetime of bad breaks, kid." Barron sat beside him, silent for a moment. Then, with determination, he spoke. "You're right. I can't fix everything. But we're not giving up. Your past doesn't define your future, John. We'll find a way." Something shifted between them. John saw beyond Barron's privilege to his genuine compassion, and Barron gained a deeper understanding of the resilience it took to survive on the streets. As weeks stretched into months, their unlikely friendship deepened. There were setbacks. A promising housing lead fell through. Old temptations resurfaced. But through it all, their commitment to each other and to John's progress remained steadfast. As word of Barron and John's unlikely friendship spread through Cleveland, a wave of compassion began to ripple outward. The story of the former president's son befriending a homeless man touched hearts and challenged long-held perceptions. Local coffee shops started offering suspended coffees, prepaid drinks for those who couldn't afford them. A nearby bakery began setting aside day-old bread and pastries for distribution to those in need. And today, the owner of a small construction company, moved by John's past as a carpenter, reached out to Barron with an offer. "We could use someone with experience," he said, his voice tinged with hope. "If John's willing to work, we're willing to give him a chance." It was a small step, but one that held the promise of a new beginning. As the community rallied around John, the identity of the woman who had mocked him that fateful day came to light. Karen Whitfield, a local real estate agent, found herself at the center of a storm she never saw coming. Her clients began to distance themselves, uncomfortable with her callous behavior. The agency she worked for, facing mounting pressure, issued a public statement condemning her actions and announcing her suspension. Karen's fall from grace sparked conversations about privilege and empathy. Some defended her, arguing that one moment shouldn't define a person's character. Others saw her as a symbol of societal indifference towards the homeless. The debate raged on social media, in coffee shops, and around dinner tables. Amidst the controversy, more and more people reached out to Barron, asking how they could help. A local church organized a clothing drive. A group of college students started a fundraiser to support the city's overwhelmed shelters. Even children got involved, with a third-grade class writing letters of encouragement to those living on the streets. Um, For John, these changes were both exhilarating and overwhelming. With Barron's steady support, he took his first tentative steps towards rebuilding his life. He attended a job interview, his hands shaking as he straightened the tie Barron had helped him knot. When he received an offer for a trial position at the construction company, tears welled in his eyes. "I never thought I'd get another chance," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I never thought you'd get another chance," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The media, initially focused on the sensational aspects of Barron Trump's involvement, began to shift their narrative. Stories about the power of compassion and the importance of second chances filled the airwaves. Barron, growing more comfortable in the spotlight, used his platform to shed light on the systemic issues surrounding homelessness. He spoke of the lack of affordable housing, the challenges of mental health care, and the barriers to re-entering the workforce. His actions inspired others in the public eye. A famous athlete announced plans to build transitional housing in his hometown. A popular musician organized a benefit concert to raise funds for job training programs. Even some politicians, sensing the changing tide, began to reassess their stance on homelessness and poverty. As the tide of public opinion shifted, Sarah Blackwell found herself caught in an unforgiving riptide. The woman who had mocked John now faced a reckoning that challenged everything she thought she knew about herself and the world. Her real estate agency had suspended her, and the backlash on social media was relentless. Sarah's inbox overflowed with angry messages, and her phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters seeking comment. At its peak, the internet was writ large, and the sudden loss of the previously open relationship with Sarah Blackwell with her family and friends was pretty. Overwhelmed by the sudden storm of criticism, Sarah retreated from public life. She canceled her social media accounts, changed her phone number, and rarely left her apartment. The world she had known, one where her actions went unchallenged, had crumbled beneath her feet. In the quiet moments of her self-imposed isolation, Sarah began to confront the ugliness of her behavior. Sarah, June 28th, 2011. The world she had known, one where her actions went unchallenged, had crumbled beneath her behavior. It was in this state of turmoil that Sarah received an unexpected message. Barron Trump, the young man who had stood up to her that day on the street, wanted to meet. And he wasn't coming alone. He wanted her to sit down with John, the very man she had humiliated. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse, to hide away from the shame that threatened to consume her. But a small voice inside her, one she had long ignored, urged her to accept. On a chilly afternoon, Sarah found herself sitting in a small cafe, her hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug of coffee. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up to see Barron and John enter. John's appearance had changed. He was cleaner, his clothes neat, if not new, but his eyes still held the weariness of a man who had seen too much hardship. The Baron gazed around the cafe and then walked to the window. As they sat down, the air grew thick with unspoken words and raw emotions. Sarah couldn't bring herself to meet John's gaze, her shame a palpable force between them. Barron, sensing the tension, gently encouraged John to share his story. John's voice was quiet but steady as he began to speak. He told Sarah about his life before homelessness, his career as a carpenter, the pride he took in crafting beautiful furniture with his own hands. He spoke of the recession that had toppled his small business like a house of cards, and the series of misfortunes that followed. With each word, the divide between them began to narrow. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she listened. The man she had dismissed as worthless, as a blight on her city, was revealed to be a human being with dreams, skills, and a history of struggle she had never bothered to imagine. She saw reflected in John's story the precariousness of her own life, how easily circumstances could change. As John finished speaking, Sarah found her voice. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, the words inadequate but sincere. I never stopped to think. I never considered. Barron leaned forward, his expression gentle but determined. Sarah, we didn't come here to make you feel worse. We came because we believe in second chances. John and I have been working on a project, and we think you might be able to help. The community's center buzzed with anticipation as residents filed into the packed auditorium. The air was thick with tension and curiosity. At the front of the room stood an unlikely trio, Barron Trump, John, and Sarah Blackwell. Their presence together was a stark reminder of how far they'd come and how much had changed. As Barron stepped up to the microphone, a hush fell over the crowd. His voice, steady and clear, carried throughout the room. We're here today because our city is at a crossroads, he began. We've seen the worst of ourselves, but we've also witnessed incredible acts of kindness and compassion. Now, it's time to decide what kind of community we want to be. John took his place at the podium next, his weathered hands gripping the edges as he spoke. His voice, once timid, now resonated with newfound confidence. He shared his journey from successful carpenter to homeless man and back again. As he described the daily struggles and humiliations he'd faced, many in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, confronted by their own past indifference. When Sarah stepped forward, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Many recognized her as the woman who had mocked John months ago. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she addressed the room. I was that person, she admitted, her voice trembling. The one who looked down on others, who thought I was better. I was wrong, and I'm here to make amends. As the trio recounted their shared experiences, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. Skepticism gave way to empathy, and apathy to determination. Community members stood up, one by one, to share their own stories and ideas. As the story got started, our spontaneous group of 7, a local business owner proposed a job training program specifically tailored for those experiencing homelessness. We have the resources, she said firmly. It's time we put them to good use. A teacher suggested implementing a curriculum that would teach students about homelessness and poverty from an early age. Education is the key to breaking down stigma, he explained, his passion evident in every word. As the meeting progressed, concrete plans began to take shape. The city council pledged to review zoning laws to allow for more affordable housing options. A coalition of local restaurants committed to providing meals for those in need. Even the police department agreed to undergo sensitivity training to better serve vulnerable populations. End footnote. The energy in the room was palpable as people realized the power they held to affect change. Barron, John, and Sarah's story had opened their eyes to the complexities of homelessness and the importance of compassion. As the meeting drew to a close, a sense of renewed purpose filled the air. People lingered, exchanging contact information and making plans to volunteer. The community that had once turned a blind eye was now united in its vision for a more inclusive and compassionate city. As the sun dipped below the city skyline, Barron, John, and Sarah stood together on the steps of the community center. Their unlikely alliance, forged in the crucible of adversity, had become a beacon of hope for the entire city. The streets, once cold and indifferent, now buzzed with a newfound energy of compassion and purpose. Passers-by nodded in recognition, some stopping to shake hands or offer words of encouragement. The air was thick with possibility, a stark contrast to the despair that had permeated these same streets just months ago. In the distance, volunteers bustled about, setting up tables for a community dinner, a small but significant sign of the changes taking root. Well, John's weathered face, once etched with weariness, now held a quiet dignity. His eyes, clear and focused, gazed out at the city he once felt had abandoned him. Beside him, Sarah stood tall, her posture a testament to her own transformation. And Barron, the unlikely catalyst, wore a small smile, his youthful features softened by the weight of the journey they had all undertaken.